In the Living with History series, we are discussing the impact of significant legal decisions, not only on the lives and the experiences of African Americans, but on our nation as a whole. Pastor Lewis, welcome today. We're glad to have you. The United States has a long history of disfranchising African Americans in particular. It has a long history of attempting to reserve the right to vote for select groups and select folks. We know the history of Jim Crow era practices like grandfather clauses and literacy tests and poll taxes. As we think about the important legal stance you and your colleagues made, can you give us some of your reflections on what ultimately prompted you to engage in this litigation, engage in this lawsuit, and connect that to any of the history you like to share with us? We want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about how we got to trial, sir.
Well, just having the nature to stand up and be heard and to fight back is where my resolve comes from. Knowing in the history books when I was young, I remember that the only thing they talked about in the books about us is that we were slaves.
Right.
And then but what I found in those books was that some of those slaves stood up and they wanted to express themselves to be human, because they were human. And they decided that they wanted to vote. And whatever structures were put in front of them, they decided to overcome them. They'd have the glass full of bubble gum. They'd say, count the bubble gum. Tell me how many is in there. Or, can you recite the Constitution to people who couldn't read? Now that right there, that strikes me as being so very cruel. And it's an indication of what's happening to us today. But people don't look at it, in the way, because some people don't really study their history. Right. They don't know that people died and fought. They were hosed and sent to jail just to have this opportunity to vote. They talk about how their vote doesn't count. And if your vote didn't count, why would they spend so much time trying to suppress it, making sure that you don't? That's our power. And in Milwaukee, we have power. And I'm going to tell you, Dr. Smith, when I think about who we are here in Milwaukee, we're like, I think 40 to 44% of the population, and we don't express our power in a way that people can really respect what we do. So when we don't do that, we get disrespected. Well, for me, coming into a situation like this, and I could see if we stood together, what could happen for us. I know the things that we could do if we work together would be astronomical, and I really do mean that. So for me, it's important that even though we have people who don't understand, who probably won't be committed to a fight together, you still have to keep, just reiterating, this is what we have, this is what we can do, and this is the power that we can have. And when the union folks came to me and they talked about how they were going to purge 234,000 registered voters off the voting roll, they asked me would I come and express an opinion about that in public. And I said, of course I will, because we're souls to the polls. We are people who demand that people stand up and be counted. And when that started, we were in the hallways of City Hall. We went to the courthouse when they had the hearings, and the judge, who was quite biased, if you ask me, he came out like he was friendly and going to be reasonable, but he stood with the people who we thought were on the wrong side of the law. And at that time, really, I found out, and this is really significant, that there was a law that if a person didn't vote in the last two national elections, that they could take them off the voting roll. That was a law. So
Right.
so again, we had to say, well, it might be a law, but it's not right.
Yeah.
It's just like slavery. It's a law, but it's not right. And so that's the grounds we stood on and starting to fight this whole uh, 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 purging of our names off the voting roll.
Right.
And in doing that, we continue to uh, fight for uh, the ability of our people to stay on those rolls, first of all, because once they get off, now it'll be hard for most of them to get back on because they didn't want to register in the first place because they think their vote doesn't count and they don't believe in this system. And we knew all of this and we started to talk about all that. And when we tried to make some sense out of all this, it just didn't make any sense at all. Right. So we felt like kind of helpless, just like folks felt helpless in the past.
Yeah.
But the thing is you don't stop. You just continue to work and move forward. And we had an opportunity to all gather together with these groups, and we talked about how when this virus, this COVID-19 came, and we saw that on April 7th, man, we may not get our people out to vote. And at that point, you know, I was sick, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, can you share a little bit about, tell us what you were dealing with? This is important for us.
Yeah, Dr. Smith, we were planning on having a mayoral forum, and all the COVID, all the COVID information was hitting the public at the same time. So we had to cancel the forum because we didn't want to expose people, you know, to one another, and people just got sick all over the place.
Right.
And it ended up that, you know, some of the pastors were kind of upset because they thought we should have went ahead with it anyway. And some of them thought that, no, there's no way we could do that and expose ourselves. And it was a kind of dilemma situation because I got to tell you, you know, these people are really sick of being disenfranchised.
Sure, sure.
So during that time, I happened to attract this virus. And I'm gonna tell you, when I first attracted it, I went to the clinic and they told me I had bronchitis. And they gave me this 5-pack of pills, 5-day pack. And I took those pills and nothing, I said, man, I'm worse. And after about a few more days, you know, I called my own doctor. I said, I need to be tested. And I gave them all the symptoms and they had me go test. You know, I had the fever, it was 104. I had headaches, I had body aches. I couldn't, my breathing was short. I was totally fatigued, you know, totally fatigued. I mean, I couldn't walk from my bedroom to the kitchen, and my kitchen is right next to my bedroom. And I went to take the test, and they said that, you know, you have tested positive for, you know, the virus. And they told me to just take plenty of Tylenol and, you know, drink plenty of liquids and just get plenty of rest. So I was laying there in my bed, and, you know, you lose your taste and smell, and you can't,
Right.
you know, all of those things are gone. And at some point, you know, I felt myself transitioning, Dr. Smith.
I hear you.
You know, and I told my wife, I said, baby, I'm dying.
Yeah.
And at that point, a friend of mine called, Bruce, my friend Bruce called, and he knew the doctor who was the head doctor at Freighter in the emergency room. And we got his cell number, and my wife called him, and he talked to me. He said, get me right to the hospital. I got to the hospital, I went to the emergency room, and I went straight to the intensive care unit. And when I got to the intensive care unit, Dr. Smith, they have a glass there. So the doctors didn't come in to the room. They stood outside because that's how crazy this could be. They didn't want to get infected. And the first thing he asked me, he said, no, he made a statement. He said, if you don't do exactly what I asked you to do, Mr. Lewis, you're going to die. That's
Mm.
the first thing he said to me.
Mm.
And the second thing he said to me was that, do I have all my business in order? Because I need to get it to the person who is going to take care of it and let them know what condition I'm in.
Yeah.
And then the third thing, it was 3 doctors. The third thing, one of the doctors said to me is that if you become unconscious, do you want to be revived,
Mm.
resuscitated?
Right.
I said, I was sitting there thinking, and then they said, but don't answer that, because in your condition, we won't be able to revive you. I found out that not only did I have the virus, but I had the bronchitis, I had pneumonia, and my lungs were infected. On top of that, I had the virus and I was diabetic. So
Mm.
they didn't expect me to live, but they still treated me, and I came through. And after all of that, we had this struggle with this voting. And
Right.
I'm in my, I'm texting and,
So
all that on
let
my
me
phone.
ask, on April 7th, were you in ICU on the day of the election? Where were you on April 7th?
No, I was I was isolated on
Okay.
April 7th, so I couldn't go vote.
Right. Right. So,
No,
but you were able to witness it from your home or wherever you were.
yeah, from my home, I was able to witness it. But
What did you see based on what you're involved in the litigation? You're dealing with the virus itself. You see people out exercising their democratic rights. What did you see on April 7th, sir?
well, when I got the phone call to ask me would I put my name up to be the plaintiff
Yeah.
to take people to court about moving the election to a later date, of course I said yes, I would. And I was in my bed. I was sick then,
Right.
but I said, yeah, I'll do that. And we continued to try to talk to the governor, mayors, all the city officials about standing up and saying something about this, Dr. Smith. And at first the governor didn't want to stand up and move this election back and I kept asking why.
Mm.
But he didn't want to do it, and he wouldn't do it. But so to I talked to people in his office, and they said that they didn't think it was a good idea. And then when it came down to what the public opinion was, they decided to move their opinion to the public opinion at the last minute. Now, what happened in between that time? But when our case went to court and we lost both cases the same day. Our case went all the way to the Supreme Court. See, and that's what people need to understand.
Right.
People don't even know that I was the plaintiff and our case went all the way to the Supreme Court.
Right.
See, we need to understand our power. We don't think that we can do things like that, Dr. Smith.
Right.
But if you have the resolve, if you have if you're not afraid to do these kind of standing up possibilities, if you're not afraid, all these things can build up to something where people can join in for power, but people have to know what happened.
Absolutely.
And they don't know what happened. I'm glad you're doing this. Yeah. We sued these people because we knew that, look, I knew firsthand, man, I can't go vote. Man, I can't even get up and walk to my kitchen. I can't go vote. And you're saying that, and it was at the peak of all of this coronavirus. And you're asking people to go out and be next to each other. And most people don't even know they have the virus. And
Right.
They were asking people to go out. Man, I was crying on that day. If
Yeah.
you really want to know how I felt about it, and it's like almost trying to make me cry now. But wow.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right. Thank you. Thank you, Reverend Lewis. Thank you.
Dr. Smith, when I saw those people,
yeah,
standing in line, they were standing and waiting 2 and 3 hours. Old ladies, man.
Yeah.
People started to argue and fuss because people were getting too close to them. And they stood out there just like back in the old days when they stood up and and they went and got beat,
Absolutely.
hosed and all. It was the same thing, man.
Yeah.
And you know, I said to myself, man, in August and November, we can't lose.
That's right.
Because anytime you're willing to give your life for an issue, for a stand,
Right.
you can't lose.
Yeah.
So what I saw that day was my people standing up and being counted. It was against all the odds. Listen, they closed down Midtown for early voting. They closed the place down. We were flocking in that place to vote.
Right.
And then they only had 5 places for us to vote in all of Milwaukee. And there's usually, excuse me, I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's all right.
Wow. Kind of embarrassing.
No, that's all right. We appreciate it.
And they usually have 188 polls open, man. And here I'm sitting here, I'm sick as I could be. It was such a helpless feeling, man. Because I would have been out there with a blowhorn, you know, and encouraging and giving people, you know, the thumbs up, you know, just standing with them. I couldn't go stand with them, and that hurt it, man.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you, that really did hurt. Let me get myself together here.
It's all right. Take your
That
time.
hurt it, but I was so proud of these people who stood up. And listen, and I was proud of us for going to court with this case, because it turns out that we didn't win everything, but we did get a count of votes that would not have been counted.
Sure.
On April 7th. Between April 7th and the 13th of April, there were 113,906 votes that were counted and used to help elect people like that Supreme Court judge.
Yeah.
If we had not brought that case forward, man, that would have never have happened. So it was very important that the case was put forth.
That's right.
And it was very important that we stood up that way, because if we hadn't, those votes wouldn't have been counted, and we probably would have had a Supreme Court that was 2-4. Now it'll be 3-3. And I think that's a huge, huge victory, and we can build on that.
Yeah,
you know, the only thing that I did not like is the way we were disrespected and disenfranchised by having, you know, our early voting poll closed, and people having these this huge obstacle of time and that virus of dying. These people went out there at the risk of their lives to vote, and that's why we sued those people. Yeah. Because we knew that it wasn't right for you to have people risking their lives just to get a vote out, when, you know, it should be easy to vote, Dr. Smith. Man, I should be able to go get a burger and get a ballot. Listen, hey, man, with my burger, give me one of these ballots. Instead, they make it more difficult for us. Yeah. They disrespect us and they disenfranchise us. And I think our community is sick of it. And that's why I wasn't worried about, you know, putting that suit into play, because I just think it was the right thing to do, and I'd do it again. And I don't think it is over, because now we're finding out that there were over 41 people who attracted that virus during that time of being out there to vote. So we do need to understand what kind of power we can have in the courts if we just take advantage of it. We have to learn that, you know, we have to get in that system if we want to change that system. That's right. And I think that's what we did when we took that suit to the all the way to the Supreme Court.
Right. Thank you for that. One more question, and then I want to respect your time. And what about November? Are we going to be ready for November? And
we're getting ready for November. We're getting ready for November right now, man. You know, you know, we are getting our ground game in place. We're not going to wait on, you know, the virus to get in the way this time. And it's not going to be easy. You know, we want to early vote for one thing. So we want these early voting polls to be available. So we have to stand up and fight for that. But mainly, we want to get these absentee ballots. So the Common Council has put an ordinance into law that, the city will mail every eligible vote, every registered voter an application for the absentee ballot. And we're on the phone and through our church system, and we're trying to get to every church leader and all their congregations and their congregations' families and their congregations' friends and their cousins, everybody. We're trying to get everybody to understand that when you get that application, fill it out, send it in, because we don't want to be standing in these 3-hour lines again. But see, even with that, strategically, they have spoiled that, doctor, because some of those votes got lost before. Those absentee ballots got lost. And now people are saying, I really don't want to. But see, in Sherwood, that's what they did. And they had the highest percentage of voters in Wisconsin who got their votes counted. So we have to continue to, right now they're planning on what they're going to be doing to stop us from voting.
Absolutely.
So we have to keep working to get that vote out. Right. And we still have our lawsuits there, and we still have our patient groups waiting to see how we can advance, and if we have to stand up for something. So all those things are in play right now, and we're organizing. I'm on the phone. When I'm not on this Zoom, I'm on the phone and I'm talking to folks, and we're trying to make sure that we don't have the same issue in August or November.
Pastor Lewis, we thank you so very much for your efforts. We thank you for your willingness to file that suit. We thank you for your collaborations with all those other groups who were involved. And we really certainly appreciate you being out in these streets, helping folks and moving this issue along. We thank you very much.
Yeah, don't show the part where I was crying, man.
That's on Matt. That's on Matt. Matt, you hear that?